Are you a high school student who is seeking to do research with a mentor? If so, this brief videotape is for you. This is Harold Takushian at Fordham University in New York City with some news for you. Some wonderful news, but also some bad news. The wonderful news is that many, if not most, of the Nobel laureates today began their career doing research in high school. It's a wonderful experience to go beyond reading other people's research to do your own. And there's no reason as a high school student that you can't do this. But the bad news is that there's a shortage of mentors. In fact, it's kind of sad how many of the most gifted students in high school in the USA and also overseas are unable to find a mentor. It's a true shortage. With this videotape, you'll hear a few experts give you some advice on how to get around this. First of all, Brian Caballo is a student at Bronx High School of Science who will speak on the student experience, some important information that he's collected on the value of doing high school research, but also the challenges of it. Second, I will be speaking about how to find a mentor, some useful techniques so that you don't spin your wheels and struggle to find a mentor without success, which happens all too often. Third is Emily Chesness from the American Psychological Association, their pre-college program. And she'll speak with her years of expertise about resources available to student researchers. And then we'll be offering you some conclusions and advice. We want you to succeed, and we hope this videotape helps. Based on viewer comments, we may expand this videotape in the future and also publish an article to accompany this with advice and resources for high school students. And now, let me introduce Brian Caballo to speak about the student experience. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Brian Caballo and I am a high school senior at the Bronx High School of Science. And I'm here to talk to you today about why it is so important to me to do high school research and why it may be so important to all of you. So, my school has actually produced 8 Nobel laureates. And the crazy thing about all that is that they started their research careers in high school. So the common misconception that it is too early to start doing research in high school, I believe is just full of baloney. Who knows, maybe you could be the next Nobel laureate with your started career in high school. Starting research in high school is a way to get fully immersed into the field of research, and it is a great way to get involved into whatever sort of field you want to get into later, whether that be biology, psychology, mathematics, computer science. Having an early foundation really sets up the roots for a wonderful career later on. The negative side about getting involved in research despite all of the benefits is how hard it is to enter as a high school student. So those of you who have already tried or attempted to get involved in research may already know of these difficulties. Personally, it took a lot of time for me to contact mentors, to reach out, and it also took a while to hear back from them. And the majority of the time, I would be met with no response or a rejection because professors or labs are unable to take on a high school student. Now, the downside of starting so early is that as a high school student, you won't have the desirable experience or skills that some of these researchers are looking for. But regardless, I would say that you still shouldn't give up and you should still try to go ahead and obtain that research position. There was actually this one really interesting experience that happened to me when I was trying to find a mentor. A professor I reached out to said that they couldn't initially take me, but we ended up still chatting over a Zoom meeting, and he asked me a really interesting question. He asked me if it was commonly hard for high school students like myself to find a research mentor. Now, keep in mind that this was during the pandemic when everything went virtual. So you could imagine the increased difficulties in finding a mentor. I responded, I have no idea, because truly, I really didn't know. And There was no data online. We looked online to see if there was anything at all. There was nothing online. But yeah, after that discussion, we said our farewells. But I was still quite curious about that actually. I wanted to find out. And my thoughts turned to the vast communities on social media of high school students that existed, and how there had to be communities specifically dedicated to high school research or the pursuit of high school research. So what I chose to do was actually create a survey and try to obtain data on whether it was truly difficult for high school students to find a mentor. And 10 days later, I sent them my results. I was able to obtain 95 student responses. And I had some astonishing responses from some of the questions I asked. So, out of 95 students, 95% said that they struggled to find a mentor, and 99% said that they were interested in a helpful workshop or video. So, from these 2 points, I can already tell, number one, that the scope of obtaining a mentor or getting involved in research as a high school student was extremely difficult for many high school students, for most high school students apparently. And second of all, that these students were seeking support. So not only were they having difficulties, but they wanted to keep on trying, and they wanted to obtain more support in the form of resources, helpful resources. Now, personally, the most surprising results from the survey was actually where these student responses were coming in from. So out of the 95 respondents, 55 of them were from the US, but the other 40 were from 10 other nations. And that absolutely blew my mind. See, my original intent was to get responses from those in America, but many other nations, such as Russia, Nepal, India, the Philippines, just to name a few, these 10 other nations, respondents responded from these nations around the world. And that goes to show that this was a global problem now. And with some of these places being lower resourced or less student friendly, you could imagine the difficulties of some of these astonishingly bright students who are looking to further their careers, who are looking to pursue their interests, and how difficult it is for them to really get that first position. So from all of this, I just want to say that high school research is still really quite important, even though it might seem impossible to get involved in. And that's how it felt for me. So many times I was so tempted to give up. But I would say just please don't give up. High school research, the benefits of it, like developing connections with a mentor, lifelong connections that could really come into your play months and years down the line, even after you conclude your work. You could get the experience and the skills that can transfer to other positions you're applying to. So this baseline level of experience that you obtain in high school can set the stone for a much easier progression at the next level of school. You can even get a publication or a competition submission or an amazing award that can really, really make your experience shine and make you stand out. Despite the many rejections or no responses you might get, just don't give up. There are people like myself, like Dr. Takujan here on this webinar, that really seek to support you. And by the way, the professor who couldn't accept me and who I shared my survey with, and then we started to work to publish those results, that was actually Dr. Takujan. So this entire project came out of me not giving up, even though he said he couldn't initially accept me. I used my creativity and my curiosity to really push the foundations of a new project and a new brand new way of thinking for us. So thank you for listening to my brief ramble. And again, there are people here to support you. And now that I talked a bit about why high school research is so important, and my own experiences with that, we will be talking about how to get involved into high school research and what strategies you should exactly use to reach out to potential mentors. Thank you.
My focus here is on how to find a research mentor. We know it's possible to find a mentor because in 2021, 1,900 high school researchers from inside and outside the USA participated in the Regeneron Science Talent Search. At the other extreme, we also know that there are many, many talented high school researchers who send out dozens of emails and never hear back from possible mentors and never find one. So in the next few minutes, I'll review 3 reasons why this is a problem and 2 effective strategies you could use to overcome this problem, and a few examples from my own experience. First of all, why this occurs. I would cite at least 3 reasons. First of all, the number of psychology students in high school. Back in 1992, about 3,900 students in the US completed the AP psychology course. In 2021, that number rose from 3,900 to about 263,000. That's a 6,700% increase in 29 years. So there are many more students who are interested in doing research, and I hear from many of them more than I could work with, really. There's a second reason, and that is faculty mentors. The fact is that faculty have no incentive to work with high school researchers. In fact, not only they're not paid, but they may even be discouraged by the university. Some universities criticize their faculty for not focusing on their own tuition-paying students or publications, so that many faculty feel that they should not work with high school students. Fortunately, there are exceptions. The third thing is that high school research, unfortunately, is a low priority. On the screen there, you see 9 organizations in the United States that encourage student research. Not a single one of these 9 is focused on helping high school students to find a mentor. They're more focused on college or graduate students or the research process itself. So unfortunately, there is no organization to help high school students find a mentor. Now, there are 2 strategies to use to overcome this problem. First of all, you have to decide which of the 2 types of research you're doing, student or faculty-based. Student-based research is where the student comes up with the idea. And some of the students who contact me from high school have a very specific idea in mind, something they want to study, and they're looking for the mentor. They know what they want to do. The second type, faculty-based, is where the student is flexible. The student identifies a professor who does research that they think is interesting. They contact that professor and say, I'd like to do research. I welcome your suggestions. In other words, they don't start with an idea in mind. Obviously, student-based research is more challenging. The student has to find a professor who's willing to coach them on their own idea. And don't hold your breath. If you don't hear back from a few professors, move on. It's very hard to find a professor for student-based research, unless you're lucky. But the faculty-based research is easier because you allow the professor to negotiate a topic with you that both of you want to study, which leads to my second point. Don't try to study with individuals, but study with labs. Look for a research university in your area that has laboratories. For example, Fordham University in New York City is one of these. If you look at the link where there's a list of laboratories in the university, you'll see that each professor has a laboratory, and you can look them over and see which one suits you. and ask that professor if you could join their laboratory. So you may not work with the professor directly, at least at first, but you'll see what research is going on, work with other students. And this is an effective way to find a mentor indirectly by joining a laboratory. You could even join more than one laboratory. And in a way, this is a good idea for everybody involved. Now, let me give 3 examples from my own experience. Even 50 years later, I feel grateful to my professors, my mentors from the 1970s, Barbara Doren-Wentz, Stanley Milgram of Florence, Denmark. These were people who had extremely busy lives. They were national figures in psychology, and yet they cared about me, and they wanted me to succeed, and they mentored me. And when I have a student presenting or publishing their research, I feel I'm paying them back for what they did with me. Back in 1997, I started FIRST, the Fordham Institute, which is described at that link on your screen. And the goal of the Fordham Institute is to involve students in research on timely topics. And in fact, I posted online a series of about a dozen surveys that I've been developing over the years on very diverse topics: animal rights, terrorism, feminism, urban green roofs, very diverse topics. And I invite people around the world to look at these surveys and decide if they want to use it in their own research. And some of these people are high school students who contact me for information. So the FIRST Institute encourages student research. And in recent years, I could mention 3 examples of this. One is Claire Weiss at Cold Springs Harbor High School and somewhere in New York, I don't know exactly where. But she contacted me to study about attitudes towards animals. And we collected some data, and we actually published an article in an APA journal recently on vegetarians' attitudes towards animal research. And now she's at Cornell University. She did this as a high school student. A second example is Adya Bahata in Northview High School in Georgia, who had a hard time finding a local mentor. And out of desperation, wound up contacting me in New York. And I told her I was kind of busy, but I would help her if I could. And she was very talented. And it turns out she did a survey on how Indian women feel about feminism compared with Americans. And it just happens that I had an honor student, Han U, from Sri Lanka, who was also interested in this topic, and they worked together, and each one coached the other on skills, on Qualtrics and SPSS. And together, they actually created a research project that was presented at the International Council of Psychologists. In fact, that link shows a 4-minute videotape where they described their results. So there again, I didn't expect to work with these students, but it had a happy outcome. A third example is Brian Caballo, who contacted me in 2021 about working with me on research, and I told him I really couldn't do it. And I interviewed him a little bit, and I asked him, do most high school students like you have a problem finding mentors? Because Brian had contacted many, many people and hadn't heard back. And Brian told me he wasn't sure, but 10 days later, he recontacted me and he said he had done a survey, 95 respondents, and he found that there was a tremendous problem, not just in the US, but around the world. And in fact, we published his survey findings in an APA publication. And now, of course, we're making this videotape. So there's a third example where a high school student researcher had a happy outcome. So in short, I would say that it's hard to find a mentor, but there are ways of doing it. And Emily Chesness has been with the APA for many years, and she could speak about resources available for high school student researchers.
Hi, my name is Emily Larry Chestnut, and I work in the Education Directorate at the American Psychological Association. I'm one of the staff contacts for APA's work supporting high school psychology. Many thanks to Dr. Takushian and Brian for the invitation to share some APA resources with you. I do want to mention that these resources are more relevant to student research in general than they are for finding research mentors. APA used to maintain a list of faculty members who had volunteered to mentor high school students in research projects, but we no longer maintain the list. But I do hope that some of our current resources will be helpful to you. I'm going to screen share. Dr. Takushian earlier mentioned the Regeneron Science Talent Search. A related science competition is the Regeneron ISEF competition, the International Science and Engineering Fair, which is the world's largest science fair for high school students. This year, in 2022, over 1,700 students from 63 countries participated in ISEF. APA annually participates in ISEF as a special awards organization by giving awards to the top projects representing psychological science. We also recognize research at ISEF-affiliated regional science fairs in all 50 states and around the world. The second website listed is our website of science fairs, psychology clubs, and student research. It contains many links to useful resources, including some I'm about to talk about. It also includes sample PowerPoint poster templates for students and other information. We have a teacher guide and resource manual on conducting psychological research for science fairs. This is more for teachers and students, but it includes instructions on how teachers can work with students to plan, design, and conduct a research project, how the results of a project can be determined, and how the project can be presented. It also contains a number of appendices, such as a step-by-step guide for conducting a science fair project, information on research with animals, a science fair planning schedule, and more. The last website listed is a list of research competitions for high school students in psychology, including the two Regeneron competitions, the Science Talent Search and ISEF. These are two guidelines from our Science Directorate. The APA Science Directorate and their Office of Research Ethics are two useful resources for students. APA has these two guidelines on student research. Recently released were APA guidelines on ethical conduct of behavioral projects involving human participants by high school students, posted online. And I believe a upcoming revision of the guidelines of use of non-human animals and behavioral projects in K-12 schools, I believe is coming out soon. The current policy is posted online. A great free resource for students is APA's OPAL, the Online Psychology Laboratory. This provides interactive experiments for individual students or students in psychology classes. There are currently 26 different exercises and topics covering cognition, individual differences, social psychology, learning, and sensation and perception. So individual experiments might be ones on the action potential or mental rotation. Students can participate in these experiments online and then download data for statistical analysis. Again, this is a free site. There is a new mobile app that students can purchase and use on their mobile devices. And then these are just additional APA resources for high school students. High school students can join APA as affiliate members. We have different career guides. We have information on social justice and advocacy, different skills that you learn through studying psychology. APA has a number of social media sites, the APA convention. This year it will be in Minneapolis and also be held virtually. And then these are two additional resources, a great website about the value of studying psychology in high school. There's a video and related links for students. And the second resource is a terrific newsletter that comes out twice a year for high school, community college, and undergraduate students interested in psychology. It's called the Psychology Student Network. You can subscribe to PSN on the website. The latest issue, just as an example, included articles on using psychology for sustainability, addressing social justice issues, applied psychology, and an article on behavior analysis. There were 2 book reviews and other announcements for students. Again, it comes out twice a year. This is my contact information if you had any questions from APA, and then 4 of the general APA websites for you to have as a resource. Thanks again to Dr. Tokoujian and Brian, and best of luck in your studies.
Thank you, Emily Chesnes, for sharing such a rich array of helpful resources. In closing, I'd like to share 3 points with you. First of all, the 3 of us hope that this brief videotape is not only encouraging for doing high school research, but that students and their teachers find it practical so that students don't have to struggle to find a mentor. It's notable that in 2022, it is the 100th anniversary of the Society for Science, which did a survey and found that remarkable set of alumni who had completed high school research went on into science, as well as the media, politics, and other fields. Some of the familiar names, if you check the website, you'll see some familiar names there that will be impressive. And the website also lists the award ceremonies for the Regeneron. So we hope that you find this videotape useful. A second point is I would like to thank 6 experts who helped advise us with this videotape with valuable information and may be involved in a future videotape that we are preparing. Which leads to the third point. Pending funding, we hope to expand this brief video to include a few other important topics. For example, IRBs, how student researchers should work with institutional review boards, and Qualtrics and survey mechanisms that students should know about before they do research. And finally, statistical software, SAS, SPSS, which many high school students are unaware of, but which are often useful in doing research. And finally, where students could publish or present their research findings after they've collected their data. So we hope to expand this videotape, and we welcome your comments. If you would simply tell me your comments at takoosh@aol.com, and that way we can integrate these when we expand the tape in the future. And you can check the APA website for a written version of this videotape. We wish you good luck. Thank you.
Hello everyone, thank you so much for watching our webinar the full way through. I have a few things left to mention. First of all, there will be a survey about this webinar actually, which will be linked on the screen right now and in the description, in which viewers like you will be able to provide your feedback on this video and give us input for what we could possibly add to future video webinars like this, with other psychology and research experts covering all types of different topics. And I'd also like to mention the associated articles that will be posted on the American Psychological Association's website that can provide further support for your research endeavors and research journeys. Thank you again so much for watching this webinar. We wish you the best of luck in whichever direction you hope to take with your research, and just remember to not give up. Thank you.